Holy shit, YouTube, look who's back. So, wow. Been about, I want to say 2 years since I uploaded a video, and a lot has gone on. As you can see, my name is no longer Justin Verlander 35. It's now Twin Turbo BMW. If you guys do not know, I don't know if I ever said this in any of my videos, I am actually a BMW technician. Besides baseball, cars are a pretty big passion of mine, particularly BMWs. So what is going on and what has changed? I no longer live in Michigan. I live in Ohio, which, if you're as shocked as I am, yes. I moved down here for work in February of last year, and I now work in Cincinnati fixing cars, particularly BMWs. So there is a catch-up on my life. So I kind of missed doing YouTube. I'm not going to lie. There's this guy on Twitter. I think his name's like Chris Costatelli or some shit like that. He got hired by Barstool Sports. Basically what that guy did is basically what I used to do, where he uploads every single day after the Tigers finish a daily recap. Now, if you guys are OG to my channel, when I first started doing YouTube, it was 2009. What I used to do is I used to do series recaps and previews for every single Tiger series. I did that from probably about 2010 or 11 to about 2016 or 17. Maybe it was by 2015. I can't remember. Because basically, when I started my channel, I was 17. My dad was in poor health. So I used to have a couple-hour window every single day to do videos, like every other day. Well, after he had passed away when I was about 21, life had come at me quick, and my amount of time I was able to watch the Tigers and do YouTube really slimmed down. So basically, I stopped doing it on such a consistent basis, and I probably deleted about 1,500 videos, because what I used to do is I would upload, and I would delete them after every season, so it would be fresh. Well, looking back on that, I really wish I wouldn't have done that, because there's 4 years of YouTube stuff that I did that is deleted, that is gone forever. And it would have been cool to look back on, because I do go back and watch, older videos to see how much I've aged, how much weight I lost, how much weight I gained, how much weight I lost, how much weight I gained again, because I've gone through that struggle in my life. But it's been a while since I've consistently uploaded, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to come back, not do recaps, previews anymore, because I'm not looking to get famous. I'm not going to be one of those people that gets hired by a media company, something like that. I just kind of want to go back on here and just start talking about the Tigers again. So I did a little thing called This Week in Tigers Baseball. And what I'd like to do is once a week, not so much talk about what had happened, but maybe once a week do a specific topic about the team that is going on. So I'm going to try that out. Not talk so much about game by game thing, because that's beat to a dead horse. And like I said, that guy, I was really salty because that, good for him. But I was the OG of this shit, doing Tigers videos. And Twitter, MySpace, Facebook, it was a completely different thing when I started doing this in 2009. And people make a lot of money off of this now. So, we're now 4 minutes in. I've yet to talk about the Tigers, but there has been people commenting on my old videos saying, hey, you were one of my favorite YouTubers. I wish you'd come back and start making videos. So this thing, I don't expect to get more than 30, 40 views on this, but this is for you guys, and this is just kind of reintroducing you to what I did, where this came from, and just kind of easing it back in to a weekly upload, I think is something is feasible. So this episode, I really want to talk about the direction of the rebuild so far, and the current status. So earlier in this season, I was getting extremely frustrated, particularly with Detroit media pushing the narrative that Al Avila needed to be fired. And I was tired of this because people are saying, particularly 97 won the ticket, even though I'm in Ohio, I still have friends up in Michigan. I go up to Michigan quite a bit still. I still have people letting me know what's going on, plus the media pages I follow on Facebook. Particularly 97.1 and Mike Valenti are sitting here calling for Al Avila's job, saying they haven't had any players come up in this last 5 years that are everyday players. They've yet to produce anyone that is going to help for the rebuild in the future. And the fact that the trades they've made have not panned out. Now, here's why I was getting extremely frustrated and why this is untrue. Avila took over in the second half of 2016. Okay, when he inherited this team, you look at all the contracts he had to shed and or wait for to leave, to fall off the books, to get payroll flexibility. You had Justin Upton, you had Zimmerman, that albatross of a contract, and Victor Martinez, and that is one of the biggest things that stunted the Tigers' ability to even produce farm talent to get at bats, because that DH spot, was clogged. Plus Miguel Cabrera, that's really when the injuries started happening and him falling off. Again, the Zimmerman contract. So it took, and then JD Martinez, coming up, his contract situation. It took many of years to shed these bad payroll allocations, and to put Al Avila in a spot of a few draft pick years and higher particular draft picks. It took him multiple years to shed all this stuff. I don't understand how people could sit here and say he had 5 years of a rebuild and they had nothing to show for it. They're just as bad as ever, because of all the 100 lost seasons. Okay, well, first off, he got rid of Upton after 2 years, which is amazing, because he probably was gonna opt in or expect a longer extension. Thank God the Angels did it. Zimmerman was just an abomination, and he had zero chance of getting rid of that contract. No one was taking Victor Martinez's contract. You had to wait for that to go, and now that contract's fallen off. Plus, you look at, he did make some decent trades, particularly when Avila got traded to the Cubs with Justin Wilson, and they got Isaac Paredes was one of them, and Jeimer Candelario. Now, you also have to think that he has been drafting since 2016. From 16 to 21, players that he drafted aren't going to start touching the major leagues until 2020. And that's if they were advanced. That's if they were guys that blew through the minor leagues really quick, i.e. Casey Mize, i.e. Tarek Skubal. So all these people saying that he hasn't drafted anyone and hasn't had anyone come in from his trades to contribute as everyday major leaguers, you have to think from 16 and before, the Dombrowski years, everyone basically from 2012 to 2016, that's guys Dave Dombrowski drafted. Those would be the dudes that would affect 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 is basically the start of the Al Avila prospects. So I don't see how you could put that blame on him for players that he had no control over. It wasn't his fault that the players that Dombrowski drafted from 12 to 16 were awful. And they basically were just guys like your Jonathan Crawford, Alex Faedo, Babe Burrows. These guys that were never going to be anyone that were going to be everyday contributors. Because basically, Dave Dombrowski's always just drafted people to trade. Because at the deadline, they would always need a piece to push for the playoff run. And they would trade those guys. Like Cork and Nebel. That's one of them. And a huge trade that Dombrowski made that set the rebuild back was when he traded Eugenio Suarez to the Cincinnati Reds. And that put the Tigers back extremely back, because Eugenio Suarez, even though he's struggled this year, is a guy that's almost hit 50 home runs, multiple 30 home run seasons. So he could have been a guy that could have exponentially helped have someone to build around. On top of Nicholas Castellanos was a little baby, and he wanted out of Detroit. Now, I know how good he's doing with Cincinnati. I worked 10 minutes from the ballpark. I've been to Great American Ballpark. So I know what's going on with the Reds pretty solidly, and I know he's having a great year. But all he did was cry about the ballpark. All he did was cry about the Tigers not giving him an extension. But he is a bat first, no glove, and he's one of the worst right fielders in the big leagues right now. So you couldn't have given him the money that Cincinnati gave him. And you seen how good he was with Chicago? Chicago still didn't extend him for said reason, because he has no glove. He's just solely bat. So that is another reason why the rebuild hasn't advanced to the pace that people would like. Now, I agree, in some sense of the fashion, that these last few years have been hard to watch. And I think that's why there's so many people breathing down his neck, saying he needs to go. This is not acceptable. I get that, because you look at the J.D. Martinez trade, Darwell Lugo, I don't even know if he's on the Tigers anymore. I don't even remember the other guy they got for Darwell Lugo. You look at the Justin Upton trade, that was mainly for contract relief. It doesn't matter. And then the big one is the Justin Verlander trade. And Franklin Perez is now, he's done. He's on the 6-day IL again. The Tigers released him so they could knock him off the 40-man. He did come back on a minor league assignment once again. And then Jake Rogers. I am so tired of Jake Rogers. It's just done. He can't hit. The Jake Rogers experiment needs to be over. It's done. He's not good. He can't hit. If he could hit like he could grow a Super Trooper's mustache and wear his frickin' hat 3/4 way off his head like he's a state mountain cop or a Mountie, a Canadian cop, fine, he'd be an all-star. But he's useless. He's just a roster spot at this point that's wasted. And finally, Jacoby Jones has now been DFA'd today, which needed to be done. I was arguing with people about Jacoby Jones. These people, it was like arguing about when Brandon Inge was a Tiger. These people say, oh, he's the greatest third baseman. He comes in on the bare hand and he does all this. No, shut up. Jacoby Jones isn't good. I argued with this guy who tried to tell me, well, the Tigers got him because if he played Gold Glove defense and could hit 240, he would be okay. And my rebuttal was, if you look at his career minor league stats, particularly with Pittsburgh, his last 2 years, he was a guy that in those last 2 years had almost 100 extra base hits and fielded his position pretty well. But he had a lot of strikeouts and minimal walks. So for his struggles in his major league time, now it's funny, if you look at his last 2 years in the Pittsburgh minor league system, he had 1,195 plate appearances. As a major leaguer, he's had 1,095, exactly 100 plate appearances less total in the big leagues. He is hit with almost no extra base power. He has fallen off defensively. He can't field his position nearly like he did in his a couple good stretches he had in 19. He's useless. He strikes out and he can't draw walks. And if you look at his Pittsburgh stats, he was almost like a 3-1 or a 4-1 strikeout to walk ratio. It was terrible. So people shouldn't be surprised at his struggles. This is who Jacoby Jones is, and he needed to go. And Jake Rogers, he needs to go too. So these are reasons contributing to the rebuild and why it's taking so long, because the players, I admit that the players that he has gotten from the trades have not worked out that great, besides Jeimer Candelario. And Jeimer was real close to being bounced off the Tigers as well, because he had a few rough years. He was sent up and down between AAA and the major leagues, and he had issues of not wanting to listen to the Tigers. He had behavioral issues where he wasn't listening to his coaches and stuff like that. And now it seems like he's figured something out. Now, he's been struggling a little bit as of late, but if you look at his play overall so far in 2021, he has been fairly consistent. The power isn't as good as I'd like it, because I think he can hit 20 out of the park, and I think he can smack 25 to 30 doubles. And he hasn't quite been there, but he's been a good at bat. He's been pretty good from both sides of the plate. And the guy plays a spectacular third. Like, he isn't going to win a Gold Glove, but he is as routine as it gets there, and he plays a really good third base. And he can put him at first. He's been really good. So he's a guy that I think you could keep for a few more years and build around in the future. But if you look at the other people Like Willie Castro is just so inconsistent. I'm done with Alex Reyes. He's hurt all the time. He strikes out. He doesn't walk. He's just inconsistent. I'm good on him. And then Isaac Paredes, he was in the Mexican League and ripping it up. And then he hasn't even made a roster spot. And then you look at guys, Derek Hill, who I will never forget this when they drafted him, said he was the next Torrey Hunter. And this is only his second stint on the Major League club, because after they demoted Jones, they called up Hill. And I'm really hoping, because he was ripping it up in the minors, I'm really hoping that he could come up and, at least stick, because the kid has some speed and he plays a hell of a center field, and we need some defense out there. So that's also reasons contributing to the rebuild not going as quickly as some would like. But now if we go to the current status in the future, Tarek Skubal and Casey Mize have now finally made it to the big leagues. Spencer Torkelson is starting to rip it up down there. He's a year or two away, I get it, but I'm just saying he's ripping it up down there. Riley Green, the last couple spring trainings, that kid can hit. He is not fazed by big league pitching. The kid can hit fastballs, and if you look at him out there in right field, I remember when they had him out there for the inter-squad games for the 2020 when the season came back around. The kid plays a great right field. He's got speed. He is not fazed by big league pitching. He just needs a few more ABs down in the minors. He maybe might tickle the big leagues in September, but I think come next year, now that Mize is really coming to his own, because when Mize got called up last year, I was really excited, but he was not ready for the big leagues. He had the hardest time throwing first pitch strikes. He got so splitter heavy because he couldn't consistently throw strikes with his fastball. He didn't really have a third pitch to get guys out. And then you look at Tarek Skubal. He struggled too. This was a guy that was extremely high strikeout rate in AAA. He came out of nowhere because he's finally healthy and just shot up the prospect rankings. And he come up, and he was another one. He looked a little more polished than Casey did at first, but his strikeouts fell. His walks came up. He got hit a little bit more. Even this year, he's been giving up the gopher ball a little bit. It seems like he has 1 or 2 home runs against him every single start. But his last start, 11 strikeouts. And his velo's ticking back up. And he's another one, with the curveball, slider, fastball combo. It seems like him and Casey both at the same time are really starting to understand how to maneuver through major league lineups and not be so blinded by the lights like it seemed like they were last year. So with these two guys finally up in the big leagues, and the Tigers pitching staff has been really good. Matt Boyd's been good this year, and Eugenio has been really good this year. Plus with Skubal and Mize both seeming like they're finally starting to get some solidarity and figuring out how to maneuver through lineups. The pitching has been really good, and that's the biggest reason why they're even 11 games under 500. Because if you look at the start of the season, they were getting wrecked really bad. They swept Houston, and then the offense completely fell off, and they got crushed by Oakland. It was a joke, and it was an embarrassment to watch. But it seems like after they swept the Mariners, something clicked. It's like you can tell the difference in AJ Hinch managing, and this is for the future and the current status of the rebuild point. With Ron Gardenhire, you can go on my videos before, you can see what I said, that Ron Gardenhire was not the guy to lead the Tigers in this rebuild, because I said this verbatim. By the time the Tigers are ready to start winning, he's going to be gone. He's going to want to retire because due to his age, and they're going to have someone else bring in a new voice, and it's going to be a whole different direction what they learn. Ron Gardenhire, I don't care what anyone says, he put up with mediocrity. He did not have those guys playing the fundamentals, is what they preached. The defense was consistently bad. He just was very much like Leland, where he would put out guys even when they were underperforming just to put them out there because they were the vets of there, wouldn't give the kids APs. And you would constantly see guys like Ronnie Rodriguez and Victor Reyes and stuff like that, and Harold Castro getting more ABs than they deserved. With Hinch, if you look, Jacoby Jones is now DFA'd. If this was a Ron Gardenhire managed team, Jones would still be on the roster because he's the vet. And I got tired of that. Now Derek Hill's up. And if you look now, the Tigers defense isn't amazing, but they're playing better than they were. If you look now, they went from pretty much being out of it after 30 games to where they're respectable enough to watch. With 11 games that are 500, they've been floating between 11 and 8 under 500. You don't expect them to be 81 and 81, but at least if they're in the 70s, that's enough ball games to watch to where you can put up with watching mediocrity, at a certain level, especially now that you're seeing our prospects pitch well and some of these other guys finally starting to get a chance. And I think Hinch is a big reason why the rebuild going forward is going to be successful, because he doesn't put up a mediocrity. You can tell with him managing, these guys have shorter leashes. And I think the next one to go, if he doesn't pull his head out of his ass and start playing better, is Niko Goodrum. Because Goodrum was touted as he can play short, he can play second, he can play third, he can play in the outfield. He's a defensive Swiss knife. He can play anywhere. Guess what? After he came up, the dude hasn't hit. He can't hit. He's hitting almost under 200. He doesn't even have 5 home runs yet. He has no extra base power. He strikes out a lot, and he doesn't play that good of a shortstop. That's all Dan Dickerson would preach of how good of a defensive shortstop he is. He's not a good defensive shortstop. He's not good. I saw this guy throw away so many balls at short over the last 2 years. He's not good at short. He has no power anymore. He strikes out a lot. What is he here for? And I think under AJ Hinch, you're going to see him only have so many more chances, because the Tigers do like this guy, and he has been one of their, and I use this term extremely loosely with teams that have lost as many games as they lost over the last 3 years, bright spot on one of the roster. But with Hinch, he's only got so many more bats left before the Tigers are going to start giving other guys looks, because they know they've lost all these games in the last 3 years. There's articles about the culture change. Hinch is serious about getting these guys back to the playoffs. Hinch wants to see what these kids have, because if they don't have it, they're going to move on. And I think another one that's living on borrowed time is Nomar Mazara. He's hurt. He can't hit. He has no extra base power. And there's one thing he was supposed to be good at, putting the ball out of the ballpark, he can't do. And don't even ask him for where his gloves at, because he's not a good outfielder either. He's another one living on borrowed time. Jake Rogers is another one living on borrowed time. And I think you're going to see guys like Daz Cameron get a look. Derek Hill is now getting a look. And you're really going to start seeing by the end of this year what 2022 is going to look like. Because I think if our pitching keeps progressing like it is, Matt Manning is still yet to debut. I know he's been struggling a little bit in the minors, but he's still yet to debut. I think Riley Green, if he has a good year this year, has a hell of a shot at making the squad next year if he comes up in September. And I think with this offseason of free agency, they might go out and do like what they started like in 04, 05 when they got Pudge and then they got Maglio, where they got a couple of guys that were right on the precipice of 30, but they needed some veteran, leadership to help these kids. I think that might happen, and then you really start to see the rebuild take off, because by then, Mize and Scooble have a full year under their belt, and now you got hopefully Matt Manning and Riley Green, and then you add some actual free agents that contribute, that isn't Nomar Mazara. Robbie Grossman's been a great signing so far. That guy walks a ton. He puts up great ABs. He's got a little bit of pop. He's been really good, and I wouldn't be mad. And Jonathan Scope, he was terrible, but he's been really good this last 3 weeks. The power's back, consistent ABs again. I mean, he's swing and miss, but consistent ABs. He's done a pretty good job at first. You could still put him at second, and he ain't going to kill you there. So, and then Eric Haas, I don't believe in him, but I think anyone that can hit over their body weight at catcher and at least hit some kind of power. I know all his powers come on the road. He's worth the shot back there. So all these people clamoring for Al Avila to get fired and saying he doesn't know it, he doesn't have any prospects and stuff that have contributed the last 5 years. The first 4 years are none of the players he drafted. They're Dave Dombrowski guys. And yeah, he signed a bunch of crappy free agents, but he was trying to get draft picks. And he got draft picks. And now all the guys that he drafted, and now that you got AJ Hinch, a real manager, you can see the difference, the culture change, the effort level, the leash that they give these guys that are bums that would get everyday playing time. Gardenhire was manager still. They're bums that are actually now getting kicked out the door and are continuing to get kicked out of the door because they want guys that win. They want guys that can contribute. They want guys that they can build around. And these guys that Avila drafted, that are Avila's prospects, are now going to finally start making their way up in the big leagues in the next 2 years, and they've already started to come up. And they're going to have a high draft pick again this year. So you can't totally blame Al Avila for all this. And now you see that they're actually playing semi-decent because they had a winning month last month, and now it's quieting down. So blaming it on Al Avila, that's a bunch of BS. Because it's been hard to watch them. But I don't agree with blaming it all on him, and I don't think he's doing that bad of a job. Because you can see the culture change, and you can see that they're trying to win, and you can see that they're trying to see who's going to be there. And I honestly think next year, if they can be 10 to 11 games under 500 this year and play at the pace they're playing right now, and keep having 500 months, I don't see any reason why next year they couldn't be a 500 team with the right free agent signings, especially considering their big guys like Green and Torkelson are coming closer to the big leagues, and Riley Green could be a contributor next year. Because that's what they really need. They need an outfielder that can hit. They need an outfielder that can at least play his position semi-well, and they need someone that can be consistent. Because I see a lot of George Springer and Riley Green. He just screams George Springer to me, that pesky little dude that isn't the best dude on the field, but man, he goes out there and he's going to pop you 25 to 30 bombs, hustle like hell, and he's just play with his head on fire kind of player. And I see that in Riley Green. He's got superstar written all over him. Book it. Now, Torkelson, I hate the fact that they're trying to bring him up as a third baseman. He's going to be first, but I get it because Miguel Cabrera is on his way out. And I'm not even going to bother wasting my time talking about Miguel Cabrera and the status of his rebuild and going forward because he's just a roadblock. The dude doesn't have any power left. The only time he hits home runs is in Chicago off Lucas Giolito. I don't get it. He looks embarrassing every single time, besides when he had the 2 home runs in Kansas City. But I don't get it with him. He's just trying to put up his Hall of Fame numbers, get 500 and 3,000, and can't wait till he walks out the door. I love Miguel Cabrera. I appreciate everything he did for him, but he's slowing down this rebuild. But going forward, the future looks better. This team looks better, and you can't put it all on the shoulders of Al Avila and listen to these people that are detractors saying he's doing a piss-poor job and everything else. Because you know what happens? They fire him. They fire him and say Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson comes up and say their core group of guys that win them at least a division in the next 2 years, or 3 years, and say it's Torkelson, Mize, Skubal, Manning, Green. Say that's their main core guys with Jamer Candelario. Guess who got all those guys? It'd be Al Avila's team, and you would have fired him saying he wasn't getting the job done when all you needed to do is wait for the rebuild to be over with. And the biggest reason why they haven't spent on this team is because Chris Ilitch is being cheap, and the Tigers are going at it with a different way than Mike I would have done, which is just try to Band-Aid it with money. They actually tried to draft this team. They brought their farm system from one of the 28th worst when Avila took over to now a top 6. They've shedded so many bad contracts and shedded so much dead payroll to where Miguel Cabrera is legitimately the only bad contract left. And they've drafted well. And you're going to start seeing their fruits of labor starting to bud and see this rebuild even as early as this year, what you're seeing. How bad they were playing. And now the fact that they're even 11 games under 500 compared to where they were after the first 3 weeks. And like I said, with the culture of Hinch and these guys finally being held accountable for sloppy crap-ass play, which wouldn't have happened under Gardenhire, it's a ray of positives in my eyes. And I see them making strides towards winning baseball once again. Because I get it, all those 100-loss seasons, it was hard to watch. But I think there's some rainbow at the end of this, at the end of the storm. And I think we're finally starting to see the back end of this. I think we're closer to being finished with the rebuild than we are being further back, as people are saying. So this video went really long, like typically all my videos do. I will be back next week with a different Tigers topic that I want to discuss that's going on. I think some of the stuff I'll discuss is position battles, the state of the roster, any controversies, stuff like that. But the biggest thing that was on my mind, and I've been wanting to come on here talk about for a while, is the rebuild, and people saying get rid of Avila because I think you're nuts. So have a good one, guys. I'm back. I'm going to be back next week to make another video. So hope you guys enjoy, and I hope some of you guys who have been dying for me to come back and talk to Tigers baseball like this. Have a good one, guys.